4 aircraft carriers out there launching planes 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Yeah, it was over. They couldn't do that. Then you sent the Marines in there, right? Yeah, ARG.
Hmm.
Yeah, then the Army comes in. It's like people don't even know how war breaks out. Like the first thing you do is you send in the Navy to blockade the coastline and do a bombardment. Um, then you send in the planes from the Navy, the airplanes that come off the aircraft carrier, and they do
Yeah.
their swoops and flybys, and if they got air units in the air, they take them out. Then you send in your spy planes and whatever. You insert your special forces in
Hmm.
to go in and cut off communications, basically kidnap or, what I'm saying, or
All
secure
that.
certain keys. Yeah, you do all of that cloak and dagger stuff. Then you send in your Marines for your rape, pillage, and plunder. Literally, yeah, really, they're your Spartans. They go in there and
Yeah.
run in there and and then you
Boots on
send
the
your
ground.
army in.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they're not, I mean, they're there to tear stuff up. They're
Yeah.
killing machines.
Yeah.
That's what they're there for.
Mm.
And then they're your shock troops, right? And then your army comes in, right? And then they set up all the infrastructure and the logistic lines and whatever, right?
So when does
And they,
BlackRock get involved? These private military
they
corporation.
come in like they come in later, right? They come in like so much later. So because then your Air Force comes in and they set up the landing strips and zones and set up certain things and whatever. So and then by year of two of your occupation, or if they find certain things that they need there, that's where you bring in your contractors or your
Mm.
mercenary forces that do the job that the military can't do, or do things that the military can't do because of the Geneva Convention and the Code of Military
Yes.
Conduct.
Off
Or
the
anything like
books
off the book,
operations.
off the books operations, they don't have to ask because in the military, you have to like okay, so even in the military, right? If we do what they call force protection,
Hmm.
and like I was stationed on the base in Japan. Um, Say they wanted to protest at the front of the gate. You can't do anything. You just set it up. You tell them, hey, they need to step back, whatever, right?
Hmm.
If they start coming at the gate, you just have your riot gear. Even if they start firing at you, you have to get permission to fire back.
And
You
what would
can't
the
fire, you can't initiate because they're civilians or whatever, right? Now, if you know it's a terrorist threat, even then, you don't just go through the town firing on people. They got to fire at you. It's always a
retaliation?
retaliation or self defense. It's
Yes.
never, what I mean, because they're not actually in a military or something like that. They're not wearing the uniform. That's why it was so hard. That's why America doesn't do well with um, conflicts when it comes to. I'm like, no military does well with guerrilla warfare. That's
Mm.
why it's guerrilla. That's why guerrilla warfare is the best way to fight a military force, especially
Exactly.
if they outnumber you, outgun you, got more.
Hmm.
It's a war of attrition, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know what I mean. Uh, so that's basically how that works. Like
Mm.
it's like I usually tell people, people don't even know that most of the technology that you have right now,
Ex-military.
um, yeah, yeah, is due to the military. And it's not your military; it's America's military. Like if you
Yes.
live in another country, most of those satellites, all that Wi-Fi, and all of this stuff that we're doing against the laws of physics, you know what I'm
Mm.
saying? Like scientists would lose their minds seeing these things if they, from the past into the future right
Of
now.
course.
That comes from the military industrial complex.
Complex.
Yeah. And that's been since the beginning of civilization, depending on who was the. You can go back you can go back all the way back to the Kemet. You can go to the Moor,
Hmm.
the Byzantine, the Roman Empire. You can go to the Mings,
Yes.
the
She.
Mongol. Yeah, you can go Shi, Shin. You know, what I mean, you can go. Japanese, German. You can go to the first, second, third, or well, America's the Fourth Reich, but the
Yes,
First Reich is,
indeed.
yeah, First Reich is Rome, and then the Second Reich is England, and then the Third Reich is Germany, and
Hmm.
then you can go, and then you go to America, which is the Fourth Reich. Um, it's always been the advancement of technology. It's always about humans blowing each other up. That's basically
Yeah.
what it is.
Mm.
Or you know what I mean, and then that leads to other technologies and stuff like that. In the advancement, like the advancement of surgical procedures, majorly came in triage came during the civil
Triage.
war. Yeah,
Yes. Yes,
yeah,
indeed.
yeah.
Being on the spot and having to patch people up after being blown, amputated, all kind of weird stuff, and through trial and error, experimentation.
Mm-hmm. You
We
know,
get,
they're like, oh yeah, well, if he's got this leg missing, he doesn't have to die. You just tighten this down and
mm.
and then use that soldering iron over there. That keeps him from getting his wound infected. And
Yes.
oh, what's this plant? Oh, if he chews onto this tobacco leaf, it'll mitigate the pain. It's aspirin. Oh, okay. What about this? Oh, yeah, this is opium. Yeah, keep him in
Yeah.
his pain. And oh, oh, he's not screaming as much. Oh, we gave him too much. He's dead. Oh,
He did.
yeah,
So next time, only let him chew 2 or 3 leaves per hour.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, don't shoot that much opium in. Let's give him over 100 cc's this time. Don't give him as much as you gave the horse. People don't realize, that's what it is. But I would say traveling. Here's the thing. Um, when they say in the Navy you're going to see the world, yes, the world is 75% water. It's
Mhm,
a lot of it. It's
mhm.
not a lot of land in what you may think. It's the world is 75% water. It's a
Yes.
lot of it. And the worst ocean to cross is the Atlantic Ocean.
Atlantic, yes. So,
Yeah.
okay, this is an excellent portion to go into some historical movements. And we historically built on this a little bit
Mhm.
um, on the old boob tube. Now, as you've alluded to, it is how high are the waves in certain points on the Atlantic crossing?
It's not even the waves, it's the constant dodging of hurricane.
And that's the thing, that's something I did. I totally forgot to even input into the equation. So yes, continue,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah, it's the constant dodging. Like, okay, so you pay attention to the weather. You always hear around this time in America, or on the western side, Western Hemisphere, you always hear uh, in the Caribbean, right? Like they just
Yes.
had like 3 hurricanes hit them, like
Mhm.
hard. Like you had Ida, and then you had 2 other ones, right? One just tore up. Haiti had an earthquake, and then they had a hurricane, and then that hurricane went down to Louisiana, messed some stuff up,
Mm,
and then you had the one that went all the way up the eastern seaboard, right?
yes.
So those hurricanes are always sitting in the Atlantic. It's just those hurricanes are being pushed out because of the weather, the hot weather and stuff,
Mhm.
and the tilt of the earth, and it's being pushed over, right? But they sit there during the wintertime. They're just in the Atlantic Ocean, like just sitting there,
Chilling.
like chilling, messing stuff up, right? Because you got that warm air and you got that cold air coming from the North Pole, coming down that channel in between like America and England, like Europe,
Yes.
like right there, and it's just coming down that funnel, right? Just like just messing stuff up. And then there's certain places you can't cross. You got the Bermuda Triangle where it messes up, you know,
Compass.
compasses and stuff
Mm.
like that. People don't think the Bermuda Triangle is a real thing. It's a real thing.
Isn't
Uh,
there another one as well? Isn't it another
yeah,
triangle with
it's the other triangle is in the Pacific, but that's kind of like it's weird for you to go down that way.
okay.
But it's like Australia. It's between Australia, New Zealand, and it's Diego Garcia in that island area over there. And you
Okay.
don't really go that way. Like
Mhm.
it's and people don't even know planes actually. Like if you're gonna fly, um, like if you're gonna fly, you usually go up and come down.
Yes.
You go up around and come down. Like if you go to Japan, like I always see when I'm flying to Japan. I thought it was always like an interesting thing, is that when I would fly from the East Coast, like that's where I lived at, I'm from, and then I would fly to Japan. You would go all the way up to
Can
Canada,
you?
yeah,
Okay. So,
Alaska, yeah, and then you would go like you would do that, and then you
so,
would come
uh,
over and you would come around back to Japan.
yes. Now, I have had on this broadcast, um, Dave Wise, Mark Sargent multiple times, D Marble, and they
Mhm.
have a theory along with many other people that the plane of existence that we live on is indeed a plane and there is no globe. So for someone who has been in the Navy and who has done extensive traveling, not just only on ships, but indeed flown on planes, what is your thought to this flat Earth theory, which has been propagated? And
Okay, so okay, okay, the Earth is not flat. That's right. Okay, so let's just get that out the way. Okay,
is it a,
um,
is it a, is it a ball?
it's a sphere. It's not a ball. It's a sphere. It's on an axis. It's on an axis.
Mhm.
Um, because if you explain like if you talk to a person that has the flat Earth theory and you start talking to them about scientific facts and horizons and you know what I'm saying and navigation and being on the sea and you know what I mean and all of that and a lot of people that's been flat earth they don't they're I'm like people don't travel a lot by ship anymore,
No,
so
definitely not.
that's what actually debunked the flat earth theory when people could actually sail, circumnavigate the globe, right? Because people don't even know why the flat earth theory was a thing. And the reason why the flat earth theory was a thing is people have this misconception that the Renaissance period, because that's when people were, you know, I mean, that's when people start going to North America, right? And
Yes.
that's and we know that's not true now, but I'm like the, you know, what I mean, but people were going to North America and they were going into the Caribbean. It's just that they would get past Hispaniola and they would try to go past that, and that's where they would run into hurricanes and whatever, and the ship would never be able to get back into Europe. So they would always get to Hispaniola, which is Dominican Republic or what you call Haiti now, and
Hmm.
they would turn back around. And they would say the earth is flat because that's where you would fall off the earth, the map, because you were going to shipwreck.
But
Like
when you say the circumnavigation of as you're saying the as well as Neil deGrasse Tyson would say the oblique spheroid, which is on an axis,
yeah.
the circumnavigation which is taking place isn't when you look at the route that they've gone, they
Mhm.
haven't covered the space.
Yeah. Well, yeah, this is like during the Renaissance period, right? We're talking about we're talking about the time where you have Leonardo da Vinci,
Hmm. Marco Polo.
Gaspicci, and you have all of that, right?
Hmm.
So, and the reason why I'm saying this is because the people were coming to the Americas and the North Americas and the South Americas and Central Americas because of the Silk Road,
Yes.
right? So if you look at all of the ports, all of the major capitals and major cities, right, is it follows the Silk Road. Like Singapore was the port. So you get there and then you look, okay, well, a ship has to restock. But even though the Pacific Ocean is the biggest ocean, it's not as arduous as the Atlantic
Mm,
Ocean. So
exactly.
it actually takes longer to cross the Atlantic Ocean than it does the Pacific Ocean, even though the Atlantic Ocean is smaller.
Mhm.
And like, okay, I was in Japan and I was on a ship. So I'm on a ship. The ship goes about 35 knots or whatever like that, right? So we went full speed ahead. So we went from Japan to Hawaii. That took us 3 days. Then you go to Hawaii to Cali is like a day. You can be from Hawaii and
In a
more. You can
day.
be yeah, a day. Yeah, a day. It doesn't take that long. You're going straight there. It doesn't take that long, right? Like from Japan to Korea is a 2 hour ferry ride. It's really close. It's not that. It's not that. So,
Okay.
so, so now for me to go from Norfolk to Rota, Spain, right? It takes
Norfolk,
2 weeks.
which
Norfolk, Virginia.
Virginia?
Right?
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Norfolk, Virginia. Well, let's just say, let's make it easy for everybody. So if they don't know exactly where they're at, let's say to go from Washington D.C. to go
Yes.
from Washington D.C. to uh, to go to England.
Mhm.
Well, no, not England because that's not the Med, right? That's up there. So to go from Washington D.C. to Rota, Spain, before you get into the Straits of Gibraltar, go to Rota, Spain. It takes 2 weeks because you have to keep dodging hurricanes.
Mhm.
You don't go. You can't go straight because you're gonna run into hurricanes. So you got to keep like dodging hurricanes. You got to go forward, back, down, up. It's not a straight path.
And would you be following the
Yeah,
the straits?
yeah, and then you get the rota, and you've been out to sea for 2 weeks with a crew of maybe I was on an amphibious assault vessel, so that was we carried Marines with tanks and all of that. So that was basically it's 500 people on the ship.
And then
So
so that type of for the layman, my understanding is that is a vessel which can dock, basically land on the beach and allow vehicles to come off.
well, you don't really land on the beach with it, right? Because a ship has a draft; it can run aground. What you do is you can get close enough,
Hmm.
right? Where because it has a flat bottom, like
Yes.
it has a flat bottom, and you drop down like you deep what they call it debalance down. You flood the well deck, and then the tanks submerge
Ah,
right off the back of the ship. They're still in the ocean, and
yes.
then they pop up, and then they drive up on the beach, and then
Yeah.
we got LCACs, which are hovercraft, right?
Mm.
Go from the water to the thing with the big fans on the back and stuff like that.
Isn't
So
isn't the hovercraft technology that's a British thing, right?
yeah, I think so. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, actually, here's the crazy part, right? So, because I was an engineer while I was in the Navy, so um, the LM 2500 engine that's on the cruisers and destroyers are um, are F-14 Tomcat engines, but the generators that says General Electric on them are actually Rolls Royce
I
50
was gonna I knew he's gonna
Allison
say that.
517. Yeah. So they're actually British built Rolls Royce engines that are
Yes.
actually generated, which are actually helicopter engines that the Navy uses. Um, and then on the LCACs, you also have those British engines, those Rolls Royce engines, in those for those fans, basically.
Mm,
Yeah. So it's British
interesting.
technology. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and
Mhm.
another interesting point. I mean, you'll know the dates more on this than myself, but
Mhm.
the UK uh, up until a recent period was the one of the biggest ship manufacturers.
Yes. 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 Yeah. Well, yeah, up until the recent, they were the biggest ship manufacturers up until the recent. I think about the 80s,
80s, that's what I was thinking. Yep, yep.
and
My,
then they basically got brain drained by America Like they
Then
often,
then what happened was Mr. Reagan and Mrs. Thatcher got together and did that crazy stuff that they did, and
yeah. Well, it's just like I'm like it's a long time to go down to Argentina and punch them and smack them around from
mm,
England. And the U.S. is like right there. Remember y'all still owe us money,
mm.
so we'll take care of it. That's
We'll-
basically how it works. Like, yeah, yeah.
exactly. We'll sort it.
People
We'll
don't
sort
know that.
it.
Yeah, people don't even know that. Like people don't even know it. Like it's like everything. Like even when you talk about certain things, like military wise and stuff like that. But back to these people with these flat Earth theories, right?
Yes.
I understand why they think that way, right? Because in the era of fake news or the media lying to you and everybody's want to run around and take this so-called red pill or woke pill, right? That they think is red pill or woke pill or whatever they want to think about it. People who think they take, whatever. I can see where that makes sense, right? But stop playing Ark and thinking that's real life. I play the game Ark. I see what you got. I see, Ark basically is the perfect example of the flat Earth theory or how they think the Earth is flat.
Is
You
that
know,
like a
it's like flat with a dome, and
ah
that's how they think it is. Like that's how they think it is, and it comes from like the when you see a picture of our solar system or
mhm.
our galaxy, it's flat. If the way they show it, you know what I mean, like that. But no,
Yes.
no, it's not. It's not.
Well, you we can go even a step further than that, sibling. We've got people, and look, everyone's entitled to have their own
Yeah,
opinion and their own thoughts. We've got people, and I get it as well, because for me, sometimes we can, as human beings, we can be so intellectual of sorts, and we forget to take care of the basics and marvel at just the basics of nature and what we can actually touch, taste, and feel. Yeah,
yeah,
can we see it? Can we observe it? Can we touch it? Like, okay. Outside of that, when we start talking, as you've mentioned, solar systems and them looking flat and stuff, and there's people are taking what's it, P1 cameras and zooming in on these lights that are in the sky, these stars and
yeah,
planetary systems, and saying, well, look what I can see. This doesn't appear to be a solid object. This seems to be moving. It seems to be an energetic light kind of thing. And you've got other people saying, well, look, there's something up in the sky. I need to just concentrate on what's going on here. There's something up there. I don't know if they're planets. I don't know what they are. They light up the sky. They're in the sky, and that's it.
yeah.
And I can dig it, as I say. Like
Yeah,
sometimes we
yeah.
just
I'm all about people. I'm all about people expressing. Like when someone, this is me personally. If I have a conversation with someone and we're talking about facts, and when the second they say, "Well, I believe this," the conversation is over from the standpoint of trading facts, and
yeah,
we're talking about your belief. And
beliefs.
who am I to trample on your belief unless your belief is going to impair or put me in a disadvantaged situation, you know what I'm saying, in some type of harm to me or mine or whatever, right? Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
it's like once I hear a person, well, I believe that the earth is flat. All right, you have the right to believe that. Like you know what I mean? Like you have the right to believe that. I okay, cool. Like I can't there's no law. Like I'm not what I mean, like marching you to the guillotine because you believe something that's not rooted in fact that the earth. But there were people that thought the earth was flat. Like even some of our really smart minds back then. But the reason they thought the earth was flat is because no one brought back evidence that it wasn't. So once the evidence said that the Earth is now flat, like people remember we had scientists or whatever back then that thought that everything revolved around the Earth.
Oh yeah. And there's people
Yeah,
that still think that.
people still thinks that, you know what I mean? And then they realize like, oh, we're wrong as hell, right? Like it's we revolve around the sun, we're on the axis, all this other stuff. But that comes with discovery and technology and stuff like that. And that's the good thing I like about science. But when you're talking to people that are the layman's, no, that's not. You know,
And
that's
I'm pretty sure upon your research and entertainment, you've come across a documentary called "A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon."
yeah, yeah. It's like when somebody asks me, it's like, man, do you really think they landed on the moon? I was like, dude, if they did, if they didn't, if they listen, I said if they didn't, greatest lie ever told.
Listen,
Right?
in my humble opinion, sibling,
Yeah.
I just don't buy it, man. I don't buy it.
Well, this is my thing, right? This is my thing. Okay, so for you to have gravity, from what we've seen, you have to have an atmosphere.
Mhm.
Okay, right. So what is the gravity? What is the atmosphere on the moon?
It's supposed to be zero according to the footage. They've
Right.
got they've got to have weights on them to or they'll just bounce around and then bounce out into the atmosphere, right?
Yeah. So, and why haven't we gone back to the moon?
Because apparently, according to NASA, in their wisdom, they destroy the technology which would enable them to get back to space. But even though, sibling, let's take this into consideration. 90+% of the population walk around with a phone in their pocket or in their purse, which has more computing power than NASA did at that point.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, right? You got the International Space Station, right?
Mhm.
Now, this is the thing they don't tell you about space travel is that the people that go on the International Space Station that's there in zero G,
Mhm.
they come back and it takes them a year
To get back, yep,
to
and get their muscle mass.
reacclimate themselves to the gravity on the Earth. So it's a pain in the butt. Now, even though it's zero G in the International Space Station, they still have an atmosphere because you need oxygen.
Hmm.
So that means there's always some type of pressure that's in there because it has to be pressurized, which gives
Exactly.
you some type of resistance.
Hmm.
Um, so what that basically means is if you're on the moon, technically, right? You're on the moon, even if you got weights on,
Yes.
soon as technically in zero G, because if you look at the International Space Station, soon as they don't have to do a lot of force. They just push themselves and they're gone.
Exactly. They're off ski.
They're gone, right? So
Hmm.
you're telling me you're bouncing around on the moon. And this is the thing, right? This is the thing. One small step for man.
Yeah.
Dude. So you're telling me that you can transmit a signal all the way
Axel.
back to the Earth from the moon, but people could barely get good television signal.
And sibling, let's give some more clarity on this. What we saw, or what our ancestors or foreparents saw on those little grainy black and white boxes, was a recording of a screen being beamed to the households.
Yeah. So listen, I understand the propaganda machine because if that's the case, right? If that's the case, you went to the moon. Russia was trying to go to the moon. Why didn't Russia land on the moon
They
after
were
you did it? It's not like it ain't the first time. We made the atomic bomb first. They didn't stop everybody else from getting nukes. So why did you go up there, right? It's like monkey see, monkey do. Everybody does it.
see.
You know?
Well, wasn't they the first person, the USSR, to put up dogs and monkeys up into space, right? They were
Yeah,
killing it.
killing it, they'll kill it. And here's the funny part. So, and this is where I understand. This is where I know space travel is like okay. I can tell that people that were born in the '80s are taking over now. Like, is because is like or the late Xers or the boomers, the late boomers, Xers, and early millennials. And when I say that is early millennials, people don't know that. Like they keep moving the goalposts with this millennial stuff, right?
Yeah.
So they call us zennials, right? Which is if you was born between like 79 and 85.
Luckily, I missed out on that the other my.
Yeah, because we're this weird thing where we were there when we knew when technology wasn't good and it just sped up all of a sudden.
Yes, the
So we had this
explosion.
weird thing. Yeah, like I went from having a literal like having a black book to now pagers, and then you go from pagers
Yeah,
to like cell phone and then
yeah,
internet,
yeah,
AOL dial up, and
yeah,
America Online and chat
yeah,
room,
yeah,
Yahoo Messenger, and all of that. Then you get into and then the 2000s. Now you're on Black Planet and
mm,
MySpace and
my
Facebook.
speezy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, you get into all of that, right? So you go from playing like you go from Pong to playing Mike Tyson's Punch Out, right? You go from like people don't even know. Like remember DVD players just came up like when they
yeah,
first came out, they were like $600, right?
exactly.
VCRs used to cost that much, right? VCRs used to cost that much. Like we went from the TV going off in our childhood to 24-hour news.
Sibling, you're telling me, listen, we
Yeah,
went from three channels we had over here in the UK up until
yeah.
the early 90s, and we got no late, I don't know, maybe 80s, and we got channel 4. And then in the late 90s we got channel 5. We got 5 whole channels, sibling, you heard?
It's
And
in
then
five whole channels. Wow. Y'all, listen, man. See, that's why y'all had more culture. Listen, even, but that's what I'm saying is like I get it. Like I remember my grandmother having a black and white television.
mm,
I thought, listen, we used to go over my grandmother's house after school. I thought the Smurfs were gray up until like '88 because she did not have a color television. I thought the Smurfs were gray up until '88. And she got a color television, and they were actually blue. I almost fell out with an argument with one of my best friends in childhood because I thought the Smurfs were gray.
nah, the gray man. What are you talking about? That can't be blue. What are you
Yeah,
what are you
blue,
watching?
man. You know what I mean? So that's I'm like, and then remember like a big screen television used to be in the furniture store,
Mm,
right? It was a floor model television, right? Like
yes.
it's actually a piece of furniture. I'm like,
Yes.
old people they probably still got them, but it's turned into a coffee table and a
Mm.
phone sits up there. Like even cordless phones, like
Oh
call
shit.
waiting,
Yeah.
like you
Star
know,
69, sibling.
yeah, Star 69. Then you got the caller ID. Then you got the three way. Now it's the party line, right? Your friend got
Mm,
three way. I got three way. We calling
yeah.
everybody. Like we just
Yeah.
sitting on the phone, and then and then you move past that, like
Hey, but
long.
sibling, we missed a step. We missed a step here because we had
Yeah,
before DVDs, we had the laser discs. Remember the laser discs?
yeah, yeah. You see, that's like in America, right? They didn't even do. They bypassed the laserdisc, right?
Mm.
So it was DVD and VCR, right? And then you had the CD, right? I remember the best thing that ever came out is when Sony came out with the Walkman with the
Ooh.
anti-skip.
Oh, sugar.
Yeah. You had the whole thing with it was like a rubbery yellow black
Yes, you
brick with
already
black.
know the thing.
Yeah. Like I think the best thing that ever was made, like when you got rechargeable AA batteries,
Oh
that just
man.
changed the whole game. Like that was just because you had to I remember growing up in the '80s, you had the boombox and
Yeah.
you had the D's. You had to have a bag full of batteries.
A sibling. Rise in paradise. But I gotta do it. 20 de-energizers.
20 de-energizers, or if you had that little battery sling where you could use the C batteries. I don't
Oh
know why
shit.
people.
Mm.
And you got something. You used to be pissed if you got something and you got that 9 volt. You're like, oh, what is
Ah,
this? Like you had to have that 9 volt battery. But people, people didn't like, that was technology. Like, and then I remember the cassette. Like I didn't know nothing about 8 track. My uncle was telling me, y'all lucky.
Yeah.
I got cassettes. We had 8 track,
Eight
right?
track. Yeah.
Right. So I remember I was home, right, and you know how like you listen to these home stereo systems.
Yes.
My uncle had the home stereo system with the black and red speaker cords coming out of it.
Yeah.
You had
Yeah.
to get that grill, right? You had to cut it off on each end. You had to get the
Yep.
grill, and then he had this. He had the glass amplifier. He had the big knob, right?
Ooh.
And he had this slot. And I'm like, what the hell is this? It had a cassette player on it. It had a cassette player on it. It had a slot, this blocky slot. I
For
never knew
the
what it was
eight
for.
track, right?
Yeah, I never knew what it was for. You had to, and then you had the record player on the top.
Mhm.
So one day it was raining really bad. You couldn't go outside. It was summertime, right? We stuck in the house. My aunt and uncle's at work, so he would make us do something cultural, right?
Mhm.
Like about music, right? Because that's when this is like the '90s. So we getting all of these Puff Daddy remixes.
Yeah.
So he
Yeah.
would always is like, "Oh, they took that from this song," and I was like, "What are you
Mm.
talking about? This is new." And he'll
This is
play it and ruin it, right? Just ruin the song for me. He playing the original, and the original's way
dope.
better than the remix,
Of
right?
course.
Course, right? Of course. So he makes us. He's a connoisseur of comic books and music and all of that other stuff. Right? So he made us listen to Kiss, right? Made us listen to Kiss and all this other.
Okay.
So I was like, all right, cool. We made us listen to Kiss and Queen and stuff like that and whatever. So we're listening to that. So I was like, what is this? So we're over there and I pull out this brick looking thing, right? And I was like, and I noticed that it fits. So I put it in, and this was like Richard Pryor's Live on the Sunset Strip,
Man.
right? This is the first time I heard Richard Pryor stand up. And I was like, this guy's like the funniest man ever.
How old is you at this point, sibling?
I'm like 13.
Man.
Like this
Yeah.
dude is hilarious. I'm like, we watch Def Comedy Jam and
Yeah.
crack
Yeah.
up,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's like you're not seeing him, but you
Mm.
can imagine what he's doing, right? So when I get older, and I buy the DVD, so I can finally get to see what he was doing
Yeah.
on it. And I didn't know back then they used to they didn't have Netflix specials back then, right? If they used to record the stand up and then you had to go to the movie theater to go watch it.
Yes.
Like people like people didn't know like Eddie Murphy Raw
Mhm.
was in the movie theaters.
Mhm.
Like if you wasn't there, like you didn't see it, and it was like, man, like you like I took like what I say is that um like this generation, like the zennial part of that between like 78, 79 to about 84, 85, we are like the bridge in between the generations because we were still children when we
Yes.
started that push of seeing how fast technology was moving. We actually felt the move.
Mhm.
Where after us, they don't. This is all they know. We knew what it was before, and then the Xers that's before that, they had to adapt. When
Mm.
we grew with it, like we grew with the speed of technology, where they had to adapt to it. And the boomers are just lost. They just lost. They just lost. Like they just lost. You know what I mean?
What button?
They just lost. Like